Ford literally can't sell these vehicles, and could they actually be going out of business? If you've ever heard of a vehicle manufacturer that loses $130,000 on every unit that it sells, that clearly isn't a great business model. And yes, in fact, that's been happening for Ford in the last little while here. Now, first of all, Ford's got three major divisions. We have to talk about the commercial division, which is the Ford Pro, typically consisting of their big cube vans and all of those trucks and vehicles that go to the commercial division, usually delivery vehicles and carrying machines. Those vehicles are often the units selling to fleets, selling to businesses, commercial operations, as well as a lot of counties, cities, and towns often scoop those up for the use of their business. Then you have another division called the Ford Blue. Ford Blue is traditionally your internal combustion vehicles. Those are the vehicles that you and I would typically buy, and they've been hampered lately with quality issues, recalls. We know that they've got the leading recalls. And of course, sadly, when there's a big incident like a truck rollover and they have to pay out due to lawsuits, that hits them in the bottom line. So a lot of times it's their blue oval. The vehicles that we often aspire to drive, if we can actually afford them, are the very vehicles that fall under the blue oval division. And even with those, we've seen declines in the devaluation of those vehicles. They're not as selling as well as they traditionally have. And while Ford is known as the best-selling light-duty pickup truck in North America, we've even seen sliding in that division. So the blue oval is taking a hit as well. But where it really hurts Ford in the pocketbook is their E division. So their electric vehicles. And there's no big secret that we know with what's been going on with Ford Lightning. The Lightning has been losing vast amount of money. It's been hemorrhaging cash, and Ford just can't do enough to motivate people to buy a Ford F-150 Lightning or the Mustang Mach-E. People do not want them. The writing's on the wall. And while we have governments, environmentalists, and all these campaigns pushing that these companies have to turn over their leaf and turn into an electric division for the elimination of the CO2 emissions, the fact remains is all of these companies are facing serious headwinds, and Ford's no different. At $130,000 loss on the sale of each one of their electric vehicles like the Lightning and the Mustang Mach-E, it represents an absolutely brutal business model. And the worst part is they can't even increase the prices, which of course nobody wants them in the first place. So how do they continue on adding price tags to that to try to close the gap on the losses when nobody's buying them in the first place? As a matter of fact, they're incentivizing them extremely hard for the Lightnings and the Mustang Mach-E's as well. We've seen big incentives. If you really need to have one, sure, go ahead and have one. But the fact remains is for every unit sold, Ford is losing a ton of money, $130,000 to be precise. And I know a lot of you aren't going to go boo-hoo-hoo for Ford for losing money, but the reality is in the first quarter of 2024, they did actually make a $1.3 billion profit overall. But the vast majority of that is actually coming from the commercial division. Yes, their pro division actually generated about $3 billion of revenue for the organization, which is about the only thing that kept them afloat this year. Because if you didn't have the commercial division, the $1 billion profit that they saw in the blue oval division wasn't enough to counter the $1.3 billion loss that they actually saw in the E division. So if you didn't have the commercial division pulling up the ranks and holding the anchor, then basically you have a major overall net loss for the organization, whereas the E division is chewing up all the profits as well as then some for the blue oval division. So clearly they need this commercial division to keep them going. And unfortunately, the $1 billion profit on the blue oval division was bolstered by the fact of quality challenges. They could likely sell more vehicles if it weren't for the fact of having all these excess recalls, vehicles having to come back to the dealership for constant updates and repairs and replacements, and of course, lawsuits that we've talked potentially to cover up the differences when somebody has an incident with their vehicle. According to Ford, in the first quarter of 2024, of the 10,000 units, electric vehicle units that they sold, with all the costs in, once calculated, minus of course interest charges, but basically all costs in construction, material design, and engineering, R&D, all blended in, they're losing about $130,000 per unit sold. The worst part is when they're only selling for $80,000, where is that? That's clearly not a great marketing scheme. And when we compare the $1,400 profit per unit on the $600,000 internal combustion vehicles sold, we clearly come out to about that $1 billion profit. And on top of that, it's their literal commercial division, the pro sector, with 400,000 units sold that are making about $7,300 per unit. Clearly, you know where the markups are. The commercial division is where all their money is being made. And Ford's clearly signaling that they've got huge challenges and big headwinds. With $100 million sales in 2024, they actually are down about 84% from the year before, clearly showing this big decline and the fact that popularity is not there for their electric division. Nobody wants the Mustang Mach-E's. Nobody cares about them. People are making a choice. Nobody even wants a Tesla, but if they want EV, they typically go more for Tesla. And the Lightning, we know the incentives are real. They've sliced back output of the production of their Lightnings to about 50%, and they're still not selling. Ford's having to highly motivate and incentivize the sales of those vehicles. And as a result, overall sales for Ford is 20% down overall, clearly showing that they're not trending in the right direction, and they've got some stiff competition ahead of them. Now, we know Ford has some big plans to continue producing more electric vehicles in other formats, maybe a rename, a rebadge of the Lightning, possibly enhancing what they have for hybridization in the F-150. They also are putting a lot of their weight and gold and efforts into the Ford Maverick, which we know are selling like hotcakes, but the sad reality is there's not enough of them, and the margins aren't enough in each one of those vehicles to even be bothered wasting their time. That's almost like walking around in a school playground looking for pennies, trying to save money when I can actually just go get a real job and make 15 bucks an hour. There's a point where you trip over that dollar grabbing that nickel. And that's almost what it feels like Ford's doing right now. The worst part is that they can't sell these Mustang Mach-E's or the Ford Lightnings is they can't continually price cut any further. They're continually adding to the loss margin that they see every single sale. And so at the end of the day, what does the future look like for Ford? Well, with this continued devaluing of the electric market, the overall sales keep going down, Blue Oval keeps going down, competition is stiff, cost of living is high, and people aren't buying. This could literally mark and signal what looks to be the beginning of the end for Ford. Possibly. And with all of that said, check out right there what's going on with Jeep. They're not selling. Big news from the CEO. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.